Hello, this is Dorie Clark, and I am so pleased to be here with our weekly Newsweek interview show, Better. I am here with actually two special guests this week. This is a special bonanza. Our official guest is Johnny Taylor. He's the CEO of SHRM, the Society for Human Resources Management. And we also, back by popular demand, have an extra guest who is joining us for the beginning while Johnny gets in and gets settled. And it is Alyssa Cohn, executive coach and author of the book From Startup to Grown Up. Alyssa, welcome. So glad to have you here.
Thanks, Dorie. It's great to be here.
Amazing. And I'm going to pipe Johnny in because I believe he is ready to join us as well. Hi, Johnny. How are you doing?
I am doing really well. Good to see you, Dorie. And hi.
Hi, Johnny. So wonderful to meet you.
Well, I'm really excited to be with someone who has been invited back because you must be a superstar. So great to be with you.
That's amazing.
So
Thank you. Thank you so much. And Johnny, it looks like you have gotten your tech sorted, which is amazing. Thank you so much. So Alyssa is just going to chime in at the beginning here because I wanted to make sure we all had all cylinders firing technologically, so we can all talk about how to reset company culture. Johnny in particular is going to be talking about his new book, Reset, A Leader's Guide to Work in an Age of Upheaval, which we are all absolutely facing. But Alyssa, let me start with you since you have joined us and you'll be with us just for a couple of minutes here at the outset.
I can only make it for about 5 or 10 minutes.
I know, that's right, because you are much in demand. But as we are talking about how to reset company culture, I am curious. Johnny and I were actually just talking about this as we were logging in. Seems kind of crazy that we are back now at the end of 2021 talking about COVID, that this is a factor. We have remote work. We have the so-called Great Resignation. You are an expert on startups and startup culture. I am curious, what do you make of this situation? Is this just further reinforcement that remote work is what is going to be on the menu for 2022 and beyond? Or how do you see company culture being affected by the current Omicron wave?
Yeah. Thanks, Dorie. And nice to meet you, Johnny. It's a great question. Company culture is so important. And I think we saw that even more so during this period. And just to say a question about like remote work on the menu, the truth is that the next year, name of the game, uncertainty, or the word of the year, uncertainty. And the name of the game is agility. You have to be able to operate and work with your culture and enhance your culture and amplify your culture, whether you're in person, whether you're remote, whether you're hybrid, no matter what's going to be happening throughout the year, you have to really be thinking about concentrating on what's our company culture. How do we take the current circumstances to amplify and to augment company culture? And then what do we do? And then repeat for the rest of the year until you feel more solid in what your overall game plan will be.
That makes perfect sense. I love that. And Johnny, I'd be delighted to get your take on all of this. When we think about company culture and how this is being affected by COVID and just the continuing onslaught. I mean, right now I'm here in New York, as Alyssa is. I know you're in a hotel, so I'm not entirely sure. Where are you, my man?
I'm in Florida today.
But fantastic.
The other New York.
Well, exactly. I'm going to Florida next week. So I'm right there with you. But so all around, in New York, Alyssa and I were at a Broadway show just a couple of nights ago, and everybody is saying, whether it's Broadway, whether it's a governor, no, we're not going to shut down. We're not going to do it this way again. But I think a lot of us in the back of our minds are sort of wondering if that can hold. There is so much uncertainty. If you were advising leaders, and you've written a very cogent new book called Reset, doing just that, how to navigate employees that are begging you for certainty that realistically you can't actually provide, what would you say to them? How would you advise a leader to be handling that when you have so many people tugging at your sleeves and looking for guidance?
Well, so it's a great question, and I'm going to really piggyback on what Melissa has said. Let me start. Everyone wants leaders to lead. I mean, especially in times of uncertainty. And so what we're suggesting is, and what we're seeing is, the most successful leaders are very honest. There's another word that we talked about, in 2018 and 2019, and it was transparency. Employees wanted more transparency from their leaders. Well, this is an opportunity to do just that. You've got to be transparent with people and say, listen, if I knew what the next variant would be or when this would all come to an end, I'd tell you. But the reality is, in a moment of acknowledging your vulnerability, you have to say, we don't know. But
oh, Johnny, I'm not hearing you right at the moment. I'm not sure if somehow you got muted.
I'm not hearing either.
Okay, Johnny, I'm going to interrupt. I'm so sorry about that. Yeah, still no sound. So I'm gonna cut you off ignominiously. I'm so sorry because we really desperately want to hear it. But I'm gonna go back to Alyssa. Hey, Alyssa, welcome back. And while we get Johnny sorted out, because we're very eager to hear about his thoughts and opinions about all of this, I wanted to get your take. Now, a lot of conversation has been about questions related to the work week specifically. And, should it be shorter? Some people are arguing for that. Of course, you recently were heard on the Tim Ferriss show, the popular podcast. And Tim Ferriss, of course, came to fame with the 4-hour work week. I don't think anyone's quite advocating for something that extreme yet, but there's been a lot of talk about maybe a 4-day work week, or at a minimum, somehow rethinking the structures that have been put in place. From your executive coaching clients and the people that you're talking to on your own podcast, which is called From Startup to Grown Up, what are you seeing, and what is your advice for leaders moving forward, thinking through whether we should actually be scrapping this whole 5-day-a-week situation?
Yeah, great question, Dorie. The answer is that whether or not you actually scrap the 5-day week and go to a 4-day work week, we have to acknowledge the truth of the situation, which was that work has been structured in a certain way for 50 or 60 years. We are now in a time of change and uncertainty, and we need to really step back and think about, well, what should our structure look like? In addition, because of remote work and hybrid work, people have more flexibility to get more done in different kinds of hours. It's possible the 5-day work week or the so-called 8-hour day is now obsolete. I think the most important thing is just to recognize you have the opportunity with hybrid to step back and structure. One of my clients actually got very focused on, we are going to reinvent hybrid. We are going to really think about actually what is the role of the office at all, and how do we need our people to organize themselves in terms of times and structures to get there. The last thing I want to say about that is something you haven't mentioned yet, which is burnout. Part of the reason of the 4-day work week, I think, is because people in this difficult time have become burned out. And so employers are definitely looking at4 do we structure ourselves to do the mental health, to support the mental health of our employees. One of my clients, they haven't done a 4-day work week yet, but they have done every other Friday off for the duration. And so that's one of the solutions that we've seen to sort of, I think, handle the changes we've seen in the workplace, as well as the mental health emergency of employees.
I think that's great. Thank you very much, Alyssa. And Johnny Taylor, we're welcoming you back. Hey, Johnny.
I'm so sorry about the technology. So good. I hope you heard me. I don't know where you lost me, but Melissa, could not agree more with this idea of focusing on mental health of our employees, their well-being.
Oh, that's great. Thank you so much. And I want to probe into that a little bit more, but I also want to take a moment to greet some of the wonderful folks who are tuning in live to join us. We want to say hi to Chaminda, who's joining us. Cheryl's here from Minneapolis. We have Robin from sunny Florida. You're probably hanging out right near Johnny. Exactly. We have Rebecca from Chicagoland. Francis is here from Puerto Rico. We have a LinkedIn user from Santa Barbara. We've got David from Minnesota, who is giving you props. Look at that, Johnny. You got some fans.
Hey, David.
That's great. Pradeep is here. Yvonne is here. We have lots of good friends here. Japar from Zurich and many more. So please type your questions for Johnny Taylor, author of Reset, into the chat box. We'd love to hear from you. And we're also very lucky to have Alyssa Cohn, author of From Startup to Grown Up, talking about resetting corporate culture. So Johnny, I'd love to get your perspective on this. If you are advising somebody who is in a company that frankly just had bad culture, even prior to COVID, we're going back to 2019, there was just something wrong, something amiss. Maybe there was a lot of employee turnover. Maybe the management was just not really doing what it should. Obviously, this is a time when a light has been shown on all of that. All the things that we could get away with before COVID, I feel like right now we really can't get away with them anymore, which is in many cases a good thing. If a company wanted to really reset the culture and says, okay, we know it hasn't been in a good place, we want to fix it. What are your thoughts about some of the first things that company and those leaders could start doing? What would your perspective be?
Well, so the leaders have to sit down and really engage in true introspection to get some clarity. We talk about employees having their COVID clarity moment, but leaders, this is our opportunity to sit down and be honest and say, what kind of organization, ask ourselves, do we want to have? Be clear about the culture. Now, listen, I don't necessarily believe in good or bad cultures. Now, bad, clearly, I'm not talking about illegal, unethical, immoral cultures, right? Putting that aside, I think cultures are unique. It's like relationships. In fact, work relationships are like any other relationship. So just some clarity around what you want to be when you grow up, what you want your employees to experience, what you want them to say about you when they're talking with other people. And the more clarity that you get around that, leadership teams are failing to do that. That's what they're not doing. They're saying, I want to be like Apple, or I want to be like GM, or they want to be the flavor of the month. And they are not clear about what they want to be. So number one, clarity. Number two, then, is you got to execute on it. And that means identifying the behaviors that actually tell you what those words on the wall or on the screen mean. So all of us have been in organizations where they have wonderful vision, mission, purpose statements, but no one understands how to live that. So first, be clear about what your organization is. It doesn't matter about the person next door or the organization next door's leadership style. It is what is yours. And then be really clear with your employees around what behaviors will be tolerated, what behaviors will be rewarded as you carry on your effort to live your culture. It's not enough to just have culture as a set of words on, the masthead.
Yeah, that's really great, Johnny. Thank you so much for that. And I want to make sure to ask one more question to Alyssa Cohn before I know she needs to part. Alyssa, thank you for joining us. And in addition to Johnny being our special guest today, we much appreciate it. Again, we've been talking with Alyssa Cohn. She's the noted executive coach and the author of the book From Startup to Grown Up. Alyssa, something that is a constant strand in discussions of corporate culture is the need for innovation. Everybody thinks this is important, holds it as a value, and yet innovation seems to be in scarce supply. You are an expert at startups in particular. Their stock in trade is innovation. So I think you probably have a good insight into this. If a company wants to become more innovative, what should they be doing? And what are some of the things that typically get in the way or the barriers that we need to surmount for that?
Oh, such a good question, Dorie, and a big question. I would say, first of all, if you're thinking about a large company, so startups innovate because they have to. They are by definition innovating. They're creating a future that nobody can already see. So what that means is they're set up to kind of experiment with a whole bunch of different things. So number one, if you're a large company and you want to innovate, set up a context for experiments. And in fact, reward the outcome of experiments, including failures. You've got to really be comfortable with failures and recognizing that failure is something that didn't work. And so that helps us focus on the things that might work. Also, it's super helpful, and this is getting to your point of what gets in the way. You want to separate out a number of experimental groups and give them a lot of space to do R&D, to do experimentation, and to do innovation, so that they're not like hindered by a lot of the corporate bureaucracy. What gets in the way is that a company, a large established company, has to be predictable. It makes sense. Has to be operational in a certain way. They have to have processes. It doesn't always lend themselves to in the innovation. So if you want that kind of mindset infiltrated in your company, you've got to start with small groups who can do experiments comfortably without fear of failing.
Dorie, can I jump in there too? It's funny, we oftentimes think only product people or new companies innovate. You can have innovations occur in your finance department, in your HR function. It has to be a part of your DNA, a cultural truth, if you will. And what we've got to do as leaders, we sometimes think only other departments can innovate and come up with something new. Let me tell you, coming up with a new way to recruit people in HR, for example, is so innovative and can drive the kind of results you want in a business in a way that a new product could never do. So I guess the takeaway for me is to all of us have to commit as leaders to making it a part of every department, every employee's responsibility. And yes, I said responsibility. Yes, to innovate whatever you do, because if you're not constantly changing, you're losing ground.
I love that. Thank you for that, Johnny. That's great. And we've been speaking with Johnny Taylor and Alyssa Cohn. Alyssa is going to be parting from us right now. But Alyssa, thank you so much for joining us as the
Alyssa,
special guest
happy
star.
holidays. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays. Wonderful to meet you, Johnny. Thanks, Dorie, for having me as always. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Alyssa. Great to have you here. So we're continuing the conversation with the wonderful Johnny Taylor. He is the author of Reset, A Leader's Guide to Work in an Age of Upheaval. Feel free to type into the chat box and let us know who you are and where you are calling in from. We love our live viewers, and we want to say hi to Lydia from Qatar. We have Maria from Morocco. Robbie is here from New York. Tina from Houston. Anna from Poland. We have another Anna from New Hampshire. Mark from Austin. We have Crystal from Cleveland. We're so glad to have all of you. And Johnny, a great question came in from Rebecca from Chicago. And she's curious about the role that education and workforce development can play in preparing learners to be effective in all of this crazy remote, hybrid, face-to-face. She says, I hear that soft skills are a known issue, but is there more to it than that? If we are actually trying from an HR and talent perspective to somehow train or prepare people to handle this like mixed hybrid reality, what should we be thinking about, or what should we be doing for that?
So, Rebecca, you're right. Too often we focus a lot on training. How can you do your particular job? We put people in a room and we say, this is how you use this new platform. This is how you do this, how you get stuff done. And we don't focus on what has been termed softer. I think in some ways, these are the actual harder skills for people to master. And that is to get comfortable with change. We've not helped people accept that change is now the constant. And they therefore, even though they technically know how to do their jobs, they're not functioning well. It's why they're stressed. It's why they're unhappy. It's why people are leaving when we talk about the turnover tsunami. It's because they're searching for how to be happy and to have fulfillment and work. So your point's exactly well taken, that in the process, if you're a learning and development professional out there, part of what we've got to do to build into our curricula, for example, is helping employees deal with this new world, this new reality, the uncertainty that Alyssa was speaking of earlier. And how do you cope with it? The fact that we 2 years ago would have never thought that many of us would be working from home full time. We've got to accept that. And that at the same time, your kids might be there. Your dog is there. You are a middle sandwich generation, right? Because we're getting older, your parents are still living and your children are growing up. You've got a lot going on. And we've ignored that in many of our learning and development training options. We've not really focused on that. It was so busy, focused on skills. So skills are good and we need to be able to do our jobs, but understanding the context, the workplace, the work milieu in which we work, and how to navigate that and be fulfilled and to be emotionally well is a big part, the new sort of frontier for learning and development departments.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think that's really on point, Johnny. Thank you. And if you are enjoying this conversation, please be sure to hit the like button and the share button so that your friends can learn about it and benefit from these insights as well. Again, we've been talking with Johnny Taylor. He's the author of the book Reset, A Leader's Guide to Work in an Age of Upheaval. You could check out his organization that he runs, SHRM, the Society for Human Resources Management, at shrm.org. And if you want to make sure that you never miss one of our weekly Newsweek interview shows, follow me, go to dorieclark.com. You can sign up to download a free self-assessment and join my email list, and you will get reminders about our wonderful conversations. We're speaking next week at this same time, Thursday, noon Eastern, 9 Pacific, to the author Damon Brown. So, Johnny, I am curious, you were alluding to this, and I feel like it's a useful transition. You were talking about tapping the strengths of a really diverse workforce. And I know one of the things that with the so-called Great Resignation, a lot of people are talking about is the dramatic drop-off of female workforce participation. A lot of times because of caregiving needs with COVID, people have just dropped out of the workforce and are not necessarily coming back. Also, there seems to be a bit of a spate of premature retirements among older workers, some of whom may in fact want to continue working, but because of health concerns or other issues related to the COVID tumult just don't feel like it's possible. I would love to hear your thoughts about moving into 2022, what leaders can do, what companies can do to better tap the human capital that is out there that perhaps wants to be engaged in the workforce, but not necessarily in the old ways of coming into an office 5 days a week. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, so first, this isn't a nice to do. Let's start with this. This is no longer the sort of pure moral imperative that we commit to diversity and inclusion and equity. It's a business imperative now, right? You just must do it. Partly because many of you don't realize, at least in America, and this is in much of the Western world, we have a birth rate problem. We didn't have enough human beings, no children. And as much as we love our millennials and our Generation Z, they have pets. By the way, Dorie, I saw your pet pop in the back. They didn't have children. And so we actually have a shortage, and a real shortage that's going to be sustained for a while. If you think about it, even if everyone who can, procreate and have a kid right now did it, that's 18 to 20 years from now before they come into the workplace and solve for our talent shortage. So we should start with, this is not about feeling good or the right thing to do necessarily. Businesses need people, notwithstanding automation and robotics and machine learning and all of that AI. At the end of the day, we still need human beings. And so what I've said to business leaders is we've got to start with not just focusing, when we talk about diversity, equity, inclusion, on, yes, you'll do the civil rights diversity categories. In the United States, those include race, gender, age, disability status, et cetera. But we also have to think more broadly about what does it mean to be someone who does not have a college degree? That is a different dimension of diversity. What about someone who's formerly incarcerated? These are people we have X'd out. We've refused to give them opportunities in the past because we had the luxury of rejecting people and excluding people as opposed to including them. Well, now we as business leaders have got to think very differently. You want to talk about a reset? Our mindset has to be every able, willing, and prepared person to come into the workplace. We've got to figure out how to help them do it. And we've got to be smart about, is it an 8-hour day? Perhaps not. Maybe it's someone who only wants to work 4 hours a day. We've got to think differently about our work schedules. We've got to, again, think differently about who's qualified, who's not qualified. Does the person have a graduate degree from one of the top colleges on the globe? No, but they can do the work that you need them to do, or be trained to do that. It's a very different approach to solving for the talent needs of organizations, and we've never done it. So I say, while it's incredibly important, the moral case for DE&I, and for those around the world, that's diversity, equity, and inclusion, all of that's important. But now there is a business case that says, I had a CEO tell me the other day, big Fortune 50 company CEO say to me, I have all of the access in the world to financial capital. The world is awash in cash. What I can't get is human capital. Like, I can get money. I don't have the human capital to grow my business. In fact, I'm not sure we have access to the human capital to sustain my current business. That means we have got to think differently about the business case for diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Such an important point. Thank you for that, Johnny. And I just want to say hello to some of the great folks who are tuning in live to join us. Trish is here from Los Angeles. Claudia is from Brazil. Ian's tuning in from Scotland. Asila's from Washington, D.C. Ayo Kuno is here from the Netherlands. We love having all of you here.
Yes.
So a great question, Johnny, came in from Ben. I think this is really interesting. He wants to know, how do you know if your culture actually needs to be reset? Is it only based off turnover, or are there other things to be looking out for? I'm sure there probably are a few tells. How can we best evaluate that?
Ben, great question. So turnover is one indicator, but to your point, it's not the only one. I think the most important one is, employee satisfaction and engagement. And by the way, those are two different issues. One is satisfaction, asking someone, are you satisfied? And then measuring their engagement, how committed are they to your mission, to your work, to your product, to your customers, et cetera. But that's what we are increasingly talking with employees about is, tell me, are you engaged? And what does that mean? Tell me how you actually show up to work every day and what you do to make this organization better. And we've not done that particularly well over the time. We look at you leaving. Well, first of all, there are reasons why people leave who are very happy. they're engaged. There's no need to reset your culture. They just got an opportunity that they couldn't turn down. It was too good to true. If someone came in and offered me a 30, 40, 50% increase, as we're seeing right now in the great, this turnover tsunami, because organizations are competing for talent in a way that they've never had to do before, you can't do anything about that. And that's not necessarily an indication that your culture is broken. But what you've got to do is do stay interviews. Is something we do a lot. So not just exit interviews, but stay interviews. Talk with your current employees and say, tell me why you're staying. What about this could make you stay longer? What could we be better at? Just as you would if you were, think about your internal customers the same way you think about your external customers, right? You go to them and say, how do you like our product or our service? What could we do to make it stickier so that you stay with us as a customer and not go to our competitor? Well, the same sorts of questions can be applied to the workplace, and you can actually figure out if your culture is right, if it's optimum for your organization. And finally, though, and this is a critical part of this, is we collect a lot of data as organizations from our employees, but you don't act on it. So if your employees tell you, for example, I heard, just before Alyssa left, she was saying to us the idea of maybe people want to work. Let me say this, really important. I don't think people want to work remotely. There are some people who do, but by and large, what they've told us is they want flexibility. So listen closely. Your employees don't want to sit in a 9x12 cube in the office all the time, no more than they want to sit at their apartments all day. They actually want to interact with other human beings. So figure that out, listen, bring it back to your human resources group, and then figure out which of your policies and practices should be adjusted to reflect to our new reality. COVID, in some ways, and someone said this to me the other day, and I had to pause. They said, COVID hasn't been all bad. There are a lot of it. COVID made us rethink how we operated, sort of the relationship, the employer-employee contract, the social contract. It made us rethink how our relationship with work. Before pre-COVID, everyone was working to make more money, And we now have said, we really do have to give some meaning to this concept of work-life balance, family commitments, etc., friends, family as a concept. So I just say, you got a long answer, but let me just tell you directly, Ben, you've got to talk to your employees. Stop just measuring who leaves, because while that's important, people leave for a variety of reasons. Talk with your current employees and say, what is it that makes you stay, or what will make you consider staying? And then adjust your programs, your policies, and your parameters so that people will consider staying with you for a longer period of time.
That's great, Johnny, and I think really helpful. I love the idea of a stay interview, which I think is so often overlooked by corporations. So we have time for probably one more question. There's so much great engagement here. We have lots of new folks tuning in. We have Jeffrey from California, Annette's calling in from California. We love having all of you. The last word goes to our frequent guest, Anna from New Hampshire. She is curious, Johnny. She says, in the end, companies will have to understand that they play a vital role in meeting the needs of society, not just shareholders. But if companies have not actually gotten with the program yet, what can we do? How can we actually, let's say you're an employee at this company, how can you get your company to understand its social purpose a little bit more?
Yeah, so people, Anna, you hit the issue. We have found that when we at SHRM talk with employees, and we survey employees across the globe, increasingly the purpose of the organization matters to employees, and especially our younger employees, Generation Z and the millennial populations. Purpose matters, and they want to ensure that they are aligned with an organization. It's not enough for the employer to pay me well. I want to ensure that what we do matters and that I'm aligned with the organization's values. So, people vote with their feet. And we're seeing that. We're seeing more and more, because there are opportunities for all. People are saying, I don't have to stay here. If you as an organization exists only to pad, to return and to provide returns to investors. And so you've got to be able to articulate more and more why what they do matters and why your organization is a part of society and helping improve society. And so what I've been doing when I talk to CEOs a lot, I've said, this new focus on ESG right? Social responsibility, this focus on diversity, equity, inclusion, this purpose, this goal, and this focus on making sure that we exist to do more than return shareholder profits will really resonate and differentiate you as an employer. So this notion that people will just come to you because you pay them is old school. It's really pre-pandemic. It's probably in the 2010s, right? It's not what people do anymore. And employers are getting it. CEOs are understanding stakeholder value as opposed to just shareholder value and their responsibility to do it. The good news, Anna, is across the globe. I was just in Switzerland. We're seeing people respond to this notion of work being more than just a transaction and that they need to make a difference in the world for all of the world's citizens.
That is fantastic. We have been live with Johnny Taylor. He's the author of the book Reset, A Leader's Guide to Work in an Age of Upheaval. He's also the head of SHRM, the Society for Human Resources Management. Johnny, it's been such a pleasure to have you here. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you all for being tolerant with my technology challenges here from Florida. I'm doing my best, but the beauty is we now have technology, right? And there was a time when this wouldn't have been able to occur. Happy holidays to y'all, Dorie. I'd love to come back when I'm having a more stable internet environment, but I hope you all have a happy holidays and God bless you all.
We look forward to it, Johnny. Thank you all for tuning in. We'll see you next week and have a happy holiday season.
Be well.